What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another episode of Bleeding BnG. Before we get too deep into this video, you already know what I'm going to say. Be sure to comment, be sure to like, be sure to subscribe. We got about 10K views over the last month, and I'm still sitting at about 1,300 subscribers, so the numbers ain't quite adding up. But you guys clearly are liking what you're watching. That's why them views are going up. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you're not missing anything that comes from the channel. And without further ado, let's get into this video. So today is Monday, August the 26th, and it's about 6 p.m. And tomorrow the Washington Commanders have to make a couple of decisions. It's a big day across the entire NFL because by 4 p.m. tomorrow or 3 p.m. tomorrow, we have to have our roster trimmed to our initial 53-man roster. And the reason why I'm calling it the initial 53-man roster is because I believe over the course of the first couple of weeks of the season, the roster situation is going to be super fluid. We're going to be having guys off the waiver wire. I know we're going to be looking to plug off the waiver wire. If you guys didn't know, Washington is second in the waiver order due to us having the second worst record last year. That's why we had the second overall draft pick. So we're second in the waiver wire order behind the Carolina Panthers. So I know there's going to be a couple of high-profile players or high-profile named players, not necessarily sure that the production is matching up with the name at this point in their careers, respectively. But I know a couple of high-value named players are going to be cut and going to be on the waiver wire. And I know Washington is going to snoop. And, Adam Peters and Dan Quinn has talked about the benefit of having that second or being second in line in the waiver wire. So I definitely think they're going to be snooping around there. And they just might be plucking guys across the league that were cut from some teams. There might be some trades present. No, I don't think we're trading for Brandon Ayuk. But there might be some other roster moves to be made. So today I just wanted to give you my projection for the initial 53-man roster that has to be set come tomorrow. This is the roster that's going to be, set for week 1. And over about 30 guys are getting cut. Guys that have been grinding throughout training camp. So it's everybody's on pins and needles, and everybody's on edge around cut down day. And I did a pre-training camp 53-man roster projection. I'll link that in the description as well. Be sure to check that out, guys, because I got some people kind of refuting my claims about some of the claims that I made regarding this roster 5 or 6 weeks ago. I think they're just trying to discredit Bleeding BnG, but go ahead and check the tape. The facts are there. I've had to go on quite a troll run today with people telling me that I didn't say that this guy would make the roster. I'm gonna just go ahead and clip that video here so you can tell me if you heard it here first from Bleeding BnG. But without further ado, let's get into our initial 53-man roster. And if you guys do get a chance to check out that pre-training camp 53-man roster projection, let's see how it compares. How many did I miss on? I'm gonna try to cover as much as I can, but this is a long list, and I don't want to have you guys waiting forever. So let's get into the list. So going into tomorrow, I have the Washington Commanders only keeping 2 quarterbacks. Now, I did have them keeping 3 quarterbacks in the pre-training camp 53-man roster projection, but the 2 that I have making the official roster come tomorrow is Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota. Now, I know that we haven't seen a lot from Marcus Mariota, and I know that there was a point that we were even talking about Jeff Driscoll potentially being quarterback 2. Well, those hopes and dreams sailed yesterday. To be quite transparent, to be quite frank, I was going to do a post-game presser after the week 3 presser, after the preseason week 3 game that we had yesterday against the New England Patriots, but there was no point in doing that. It was some horrible football being played, and there's no shade to the people that are out there, because I know a couple of you guys are going to be working with me next week. A couple of you guys are going to be used car salesmen, and that's no shade to you, but there was literally no sense in recapping that game yesterday, and it was late, and I went back to school today. It's back. I went back to work today. It's back to school time. So yeah, Jeff Driscoll struggled yesterday. Now I know he was using a lot of our backups or equipped with a lot of our backups against the Pat starters and things of that nature. But he threw a pick. He was staring down his receiver, and I thought that he was going to be out there guns a blazing. He went out there yesterday in the first couple of drives looking like week one against the Jets, but the wheels kind of fell off. And I think that Jeff Driscoll is a guy that isn't going to necessarily be picked up by other teams. It's not like he lit the world on fire this preseason. And I do think that he's a scheme fit, but I think as of right now, due to the number crunch, especially what we're going to have on the number crunch that we're going to have on the defensive side of the ball, I think that we're going to have Jaden Daniels and Marcus Mariota as the only two manning the helm at the quarterback position to start the season. We all know that there's that emergency QB3 rule that was implemented after the NFC Championship game in the 2022 playoffs. Was that? Yeah, the 2022 playoffs after that debacle that the San Francisco 49ers had when all of their quarterbacks got hurt. So in lieu that we do need a quarterback 3, we can always use that rule in effect. And in my pre-training camp 53-man roster projection, I did actually have Sam Hartman making the roster. Those plans kind of dimmed once he got hurt in the first week. He didn't necessarily see any more preseason action while he did practice last week. I think that Sam is a practice squad candidate, and hopefully he can be quarterback 2 in the future, maybe if that's next year. But like I said, I just like what he brings to the room. You see that, he has an invigorating personality. Jaden Daniels, him and Sam Hartman have been conjoined at the hip since training camp day one. So I think that he's a positive influence on Jaden as well. They had the same quarterback coach, and they were working pre-draft together. So I think it's important to have Sam in the room. But just due to the numbers crunch, I have us keeping 2 quarterbacks instead of 3 like I initially had before training camp. Now moving on, I initially had us keeping 4 running backs coming out of or before training camp, and I still have us keeping 4 running backs coming out of training camp. Now the names might be a little different. The 4 running backs that I have making the 53-man roster come tomorrow are RB1 Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler. I have Michael Wiley, who might end up making me look like the smartest person in Commanders land because I had him making the team in the pre-training camp video. So go ahead and check the facts. And then the 4th name that I have is Kaz Allen. Now we know that Brian Robinson and Austin Eckler are shoo-ins, so I'm not going to spend too much time on them. And Michael Wiley, now I know that Chris Rodriguez is a draft pick. I know Jeremy McNichols was bought in by this regime and things of that nature, but Michael Wiley was too. And I think that he's shown a lot more juice than Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez over the course of 3 preseason games. Michael Wiley was a touchdown magnet. I think he scored in all 3 preseason games. And as I said, I think he just shows more juice. He's younger, the legs are there, and he's just more explosive than what Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez were able to exhibit in this preseason. I think that Chris Rodriguez is cooked. I honestly think that this position might come in between or come down to Michael Wiley and Jeremy McNichols. And I'm not as convinced that Michael Wiley is going to make the team because it seems like the coaching staff might be in favor of Jeremy McNichols, with him getting the first carries in the opening drive and things of that nature. He was getting the carries before Michael Wiley the other weeks of the preseason or the earlier weeks of the preseason. So it looks like he might be more favorable in the coach's eyes, but I'm letting you know right now that would be a mistake. That would be a mistake. Everybody with 2 eyes can tell you that Michael Wiley has more juice than Jeremy McNichols and Chris Rodriguez. And if you listen to Chris Rodriguez, he did a one-on-one interview with Mitch Tinsler of the Beltway Football Podcast. And in that interview, he sounded cooked. He sounded like he had no hopes of making the team. And I initially had him making the team. He was the 4th running back making the team along with Michael Wiley. But as you see, I do have Kaz Allen making the team as a running back. Now, let me be the first to say, Kaz Allen hasn't necessarily impressed throughout any of these preseason games. And I even went out on a limb yesterday where I said that Kaz Allen, unless he epically fails, and this is before the game, I said that unless he epically fails in this game, I think that the team is going to find a way to put him on the roster. You see him out there. He was the first one to return kicks yesterday. He's been returning, I think he returned a couple of punts in the preseason as well. Cliff Kingsbury compared this man to Deebo Samuel the other day. And like I said, while I haven't necessarily seen it, I'll be a fool to think that they're going to cut that just a week later. He compared this man to Deebo Samuel the other day. And you see that they're trying their best to get him in where he fit in. He was working with the wide receivers early in the camp. They're like, nah, bro, you're a running back. He fumbled against the Dolphins, and then, Dan Quinn in his presser seemed like that fumble wasn't really too much cause of concern. And then you see him out there with the first team kick returners. I think they like what he does with the ball in his hands. No diddy. But I gotta see more. It's not necessarily translating into the game. So he must be setting the practice fields on fire in Ashburn. And I like Kaz Allen. This is not a knock by any means, but I think that they're going to force a way to find a way to put Kaz Allen on the team, and he shouldn't be anything other than RB4 right now. He shouldn't be above the depth chart over Michael Wiley. I told y'all before, Michael Wiley, one of the best running backs in the RPO in the entire country when he was in college. We're going to be running a lot of RPO this year. Match made in heaven. So going on to the wide receivers, I got us keeping 6 wide receivers, which I initially had us keeping. But, of course, I had Jahan Dotson. So the 6 that I initially had us keeping were Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Luke McCaffrey, De'Ami Brown, Olamide Zaccheaus, and then I had us Marcus Rosemy-Jackson, undrafted free agent out of the University of Georgia, making the roster. No, that's not the case. That's not the case anymore. That's not the case at all. Of course, Jahan Dotson isn't on the roster anymore. We told you all about that last week. We ran all the victory laps that we could run last week. So Jahan Dotson isn't on that roster. So I do have Bryson Tremaine replacing Jahan Dotson. And then I have Brian Pringle replacing Marcus Rosemy-Jackson. This coaching staff has let you know what they want in a receiver, and that's a big physical guy. And while I know that Martavis Bryant made a couple plays yesterday, he had a good block on a run that broke to the second level. He had a touchdown, and he drew a couple of pass interferences. But I just think that, his time was short. He didn't have enough time. If he came in training camp day one and did the things that he did yesterday and over the course of the last month, I think that he might have had a chance to make the roster. But we heard from July 27th when they came in that Bryson Tremaine was frying our DBs. Now, it hasn't necessarily translated to the preseason games or things of that nature, but I think that he's shown enough in camp. Because if you guys can remember over the course of the first couple of weeks in camp, it seemed like Bryson Tremaine was making a play every day, right? And while it hasn't translated to the game, I think that he might have a chemistry with a guy like Jaden Daniels where they still want to build upon that and build upon that rapport. And I think that Martavis Bryant is a prime candidate for the practice squad because him being out 6 years, like he was on Dallas's practice squad last year, and nobody was anxious to pluck him off of there. So I don't think that anybody will be anxious if we cut him, and he's a prime candidate for the practice squad. So I still have us keeping 6 wide receivers. I have us keeping 4 I was keeping 4 tight ends. I only had us keeping 3 at first, with the top 3 being Zach Ertz, Ben Sinnott, and John Bates. But I do have Cole Turner making this roster. As crazy as that may seem after yesterday's game. He had a couple of drops. One I think might not have been his fault. I think that he was sitting down in zone, and Jeff Driscoll thought it was man, and I think that it might have been zone coverage. I haven't had a chance to look at the all 22. And then he had one just bad drop. But he did come up with a big 25-yard catch in the second half, showing what I saw. I'm not going to say you guys because you guys weren't in the mini camps in 2022 and 2023 when he was fucking frying. He was frying the first team defense. Ask Rio Robinson. He was looking like prime Jimmy Graham out that bitch. And that's why I'm hesitant to, cut a guy that I've seen, and I know it's practice, but I've seen him like Moss our number 1 safeties. And no, that's not the highest acclaim. That's like being the tallest midget. But he's done it against NFL talent, and I've seen it. But I need him to put something out on the play field in between the white lines when it counts. This is year 3. And it's kind of like the same theory that I had with De'Ami Brown. You guys know that I refer back to that Richmond training camp in De'Ami's rookie year a lot because De'Ami looked like an NFL wide receiver in that training camp, making Kendall Fuller look wild. Like he was frying all of our DBs. Now, like I said, I know that ain't the highest acclaim, but he was doing it against NFL talent. I hadn't seen De'Ami Brown do that again until this year. So hopefully, Cole Turner can get some of that De'Ami Brown mojo, that De'Ami Brown juice that he's got going into the 2024 season, because I do think that this staff likes Cole Turner. Because they've talked Cole Turner up. I heard one of the talking points that they gave him earlier in the season or in the offseason is they wanted him to be more physical. And you saw it on that touchdown run that Jaden had against the New York Jets on that first drive. He damn near put a motherfucker through the end zone. So it's not like that he isn't taking coaching. This is a guy that's still young. And, Zach Ertz being our tight end one, he ain't the healthiest and he ain't the youngest. So I think that we want depth there. And I think we want a little bit of experience there with, John Bates and Ben Sinnott not being the oldest guys. I think Cole Turner, instead of, plugging an undrafted free agent or things of that nature, like a Colson Yankov making the team, I think that Cole Turner has the edge in that regard. I have us keeping 10 linemen, with us resulting in having 26 players on the offensive side of the ball, like we did in our pre-training camp 53-man roster. The 10 linemen that I had before training camp were Brandon Coleman, Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, Sam Cosmi, Andrew Wiley, Cornelius Lucas, Mason Brooks, Trent Scott, Michael Dieter, and Ricky Stromberg. I had Chris Paul getting cut in the pre-training camp 53-man roster. And I said in that video, I think that Mason Brooks looked better than Chris Paul last year. But Mason Brooks obviously isn't making the team this year with him being cut a couple of weeks ago. And I think that Chris Paul is going to replace him in that 10-man unit. Because Chris Paul has showed his versatility, whether we like it or not. In those practices against the Jets, in those practices against the Dolphins, he showed that, he was capable of, I ain't going to say playing right tackle, but he was holding it down a little bit. And that's what he played at the University of Tulsa. And while I do think that he projects better as a guard, if he can play it in a pinch, that's going to help his cause. I know the term positional versatility has scarred us. The positional versatility has scarred us because we heard it come from Paddle Boat Ron's mouth so many fucking times. But I think positional versatility might help Chris Paul get on this roster over, a couple of guys like a Braden Daniels. But I do think that Braden Daniels is a prime candidate to make the practice squad because I love what I saw from him at right guard. Braden Daniels isn't an NFL tackle. We saw that last offseason. I saw that in the minicamp practices and the training camp practices I saw last year. Then it was almost like he vanished off of the face of the earth. So I didn't expect a lot from Braden Daniels in the preseason, but I think he showed his ass in the New York Jets game. I think he had a decent game against the Miami Dolphins. Haven't had a chance to see what he did yesterday against the New England Patriots, but I think that he's a prime candidate for the practice squad because if we can remember when he was drafted, he was still like light in the ass. He was still under 300 pounds, and you don't see too many NFL linemen walking around under 300 pounds nowadays in 2024. So that's 26 offensive players that I have us keeping. Now let's move on to the defense. I have us keeping 24 defensive players. So initially in the pre-training camp 53-man roster, I had us keeping 9 defensive linemen, and those 9 defensive linemen were John Allen, Daron Payne, Fedarian Mathis, John Ridgway, Dorrance Armstrong, Cleveland Farrell, Dante Fowler, KJ Henry, Andre Jones Jr., and I had our draft pick Javonte Jean-Baptiste getting cut, our 7th round draft pick from the University of Notre Dame. Now I have us having 10 defensive linemen, a lot of those same names, but I do think that Javonte Jean-Baptiste has Debo a roster spot off of Andre Jr. I think that he showed more than Andre Jones Jr. this year. And while I do like the athletic profile that Andre Jones Jr. has, I do like the frame that he possesses. I don't think that he necessarily rushes with a lot of a pass rush plan. And he's a minus run defender. So I think that, Adam Peters and the regime that bought Javonte Jean-Baptiste in is going to give him that chance over a guy like Andre Jones Jr., who they did not. And the 10th person, the additional body that I have on the defensive line that I didn't have in the pre-training camp 53-man roster was Jamin Davis, and I do have him making the team at the defensive end position. And I know that's a lot of controversy coming with that pick. But I think that Jamin, especially in the Miami Dolphins game, I think he made a couple of flash plays that showed or made Dan Quinn and Joe Witt convinced that he might be able to get this pass rush thing later down the line with a couple more reps. Now I know you guys, a couple of people came to me and were like, "Well, look at the all 22. Look at his every snap. He was out there getting bullied." Jamin Davis is a backup. I'm not expecting much of him. If you expecting Jamin Davis to give you that 16 pick production that he was drafted with in 2021, you're a fool for that. You're a fucking fool for that. But guess what? A strip sack makes up for a lot of the plays that he was getting bullied for. It makes up for the dudes that's been playing defensive end all their life. So why wouldn't it make up for Jamin Davis who's been playing it for 4 weeks? Idiots. And the people that's going back and forth with me, I'm sorry, I just got a little hot. I got a little in the moment. People telling me like, oh, Jamin was getting bullied. And he was. I'm not saying that he wasn't. But this is a guy that's a developmental defensive end. What are y'all expecting? Like, what are we expecting? Now, let's move on to the linebacker position. I have us keeping 4 linebackers, but it's a caveat with that. So the 4 linebackers, and I had us initially having 4 linebackers on the team, but Jamin Davis was one of the 4 that I had before the pre-training camp. 53, he was a linebacker in that assessment that I had before training camp, because I know that we were talking about him potentially moving to defensive end, but I had to see it in 3D. I had to see it in tangible evidence to be able to write it in stone. But the 4 linebackers that I have making the roster tomorrow are Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, Jordan McGee, and I have Michael Walker making it. Initially, I had Anthony Pittman being that 4th linebacker, but Anthony Pittman was damn bad this preseason, especially in that Miami Dolphins game. He looked like rookie Jamin Davis, like not knowing where the ball was, lack of instincts, and this is a guy that's a veteran. So, I mean, you're supposed to harp on your instincts and, rely on your instincts when some of your athleticism wanes, and it looks like Anthony Pittman's athleticism might have waned, along with some of his football IQ. Because I remember him being like a special team ace with the Detroit Lions, but I haven't really necessarily seen him pop on the special teams, and I really necessarily haven't seen him pop on defense. He's looked quite bad on the defensive end, if I'm being 100% honest. Now, the one caveat is Jordan McGee might start, the season on the short-term IR with that meniscus injury. Now, with the injury, a lot of people were projecting that he was going to miss a lot of time, but I've heard both Mitch Tischler and John Keim both say that they only expect him to miss the first couple of weeks. So that's why I have him making the roster instead of being placed on the injured reserve, because if you're placed on that short-term IR, even if it's the short-term IR, you do have to miss the first 4 weeks of the season. So if he's projected to only miss 2, I think that the team might hold out, and I think that's part of the reason why, we have the numbers crunch of me only giving us 2 quarterbacks and things of that nature. So the 4 linebackers that I have making the team as of tomorrow is Jordan McGee, Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, and Michael Walker, with the caveat being if Jordan McGee is placed on the IR. And last but not least, other than the specialists that I'll get to later, but I'm talking about the real football players, the real 1 through 3 down football players. Let's get into the DBs. So before training camp, I had us keeping Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Michael Davis, Mikey Samberstill, Prince Anusium, Jeremy Chin, Jartavius Martin, Percy Butler, Derek Forrest, and Dom Hampton. And I had you guys' favorite special teamer. I had Jeremy Reeves getting cut. Well, guess what? I got some positive news in the Washington Commander community, because I'll be a fool to not at least admit that Jeremy Reeves is a fan favorite, despite how I feel about him. And I don't dislike Jeremy Reeves. I just think that he gets a lot of acclaim for a guy that only performs for about 3 or 4 snaps a game. But to the Washington faithful, I do have your boy Jeremy Reeves making the team come tomorrow. So I still have us keeping 10 DBs. And the 10 that I have making the roster tomorrow are Benjamin St-Juste, Emmanuel Forbes, Michael Davis, Mikey Samberstill. And then I have Tyler Owens making the team instead of Prince Anusium. And I have Jeremy Reeves making the team instead of Derek Forrest. There it is. I told y'all when I was boots on the ground in Ashburn a month ago, I told y'all, I said Derek Forrest need to be looking over his shoulder, because he was out there running with the 3s. He was out there getting third team reps, and it looked like they had a plan for Dom Hampton. And one of the reasons why I went light with the in numbers with the linebacker is because I think that Dom Hampton is going to be playing a lot of Dom linebacker this year. And Dom Hampton hasn't been necessarily the most impressive this preseason. Not saying that by any means, but I think they have a role for him. And this is the regime that bought in Dom Hampton. This is not the regime that drafted Derek Forrest, and Derek Forrest was out there with the threes yesterday. And guess what? I thought that going into the game yesterday, Jeremy Reeves and Derek Forrest were battling for the same spot. We're battling for the last spot. And Jeremy Reeves made more plays than Derek Forrest. And I'm not. I don't take pride in saying that, because I do like Derek Forrest more than Jeremy Reeves as a player, because I think he's more impactful in downs 1 through 3. But in terms of just yesterday, Jeremy Reeves had a better game than Derek Forrest. And Derek Forrest is out there tweeting Bible verses today. So, that can only mean a couple of things at this point in the year. So, yeah. And the 3, so that is 50. I got us keeping 26 offensive players, 24 defensive players. And then the 3 specialists I have us keeping is long snapper Tyler Ott. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it a blessing to get out of a preseason without the long snapper being a fucking discussion? Shout out Cameron Cheeseman. Out there sitting on somebody's couch right now. Punter Treshway. And then Cade York made his 2 field goals yesterday. I told you, I like Cade York. I know he was out the league last year, but this was a guy that was a 4th round draft pick. So he was impressing somebody kicking some goddamn footballs. And as I mentioned in my last episode, I think the Cleveland Browns failed him because they knew that he had such a big leg. Some of his first kicks in his career were 61, 63, 64-yard field goals. Like he couldn't even get his feet wet yet. That shook his confidence, and he was never necessarily capable or able. I'm not going to say capable. He never was able to bounce back, but I'm glad that he's found his way to the back into the league. Because even though they were short kicks yesterday, you saw the juice. You saw the juice. Even though I think he made a 36-yarder, that joint would have been good from 50. Like he kicked that joint high up in the middle of the end zone. So yeah, I think that our kicker troubles might be solved, but I'm still holding out hope that it is. Not gonna write that etched in stone yet. But yeah, that'll do it for our 53-man roster projection. Let me know about yours. Let me know who you agree with. Let me know who you disagree with. As always, if you're not following us on social media, go ahead and do that. And why are you not doing it? Go ahead and follow us on X at BleedingBnG, BleedingBnG, on Instagram at BleedingBnG, BleedingBnG. If you're listening to us on audio-only platforms such as Spotify, such as Apple Podcasts, please leave a rating. Please leave a review. That's the only way that we're going to finesse these algorithms so that when you're searching anything Washington Commanders, Bleeding BnG is that #1 content hub that pops up in your search bar, because you know that you come to us to get the most raw, uncut, and unfiltered analysis on your Washington Commanders, and hopefully I gave that to you today. Checking on you later. Peace.